Hello and welcome to the Birchal Podcast. My name is Emily. I'm your host, and today I'm joined by a VIP in the hot seat. We've got Matt Vitale, the co-founder and CEO of Birchal. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Em.
It's been a while in between drinks, should we say?
It has. I was one of the first guests this year.
You were, when we had a different host.
A different host.
Now it's me. You can't get rid of me.
Yeah.
I know.
Look how far you've come.
We've come a long way. I think we're coming up to 50 episodes now, which is pretty crazy.
It's amazing.
And coming up to the end of the year.
Yeah. So many incredible stories. I did, you'll remember, I did kind of sneak in an episode where I got to interview John Bertrand and Andrew Ellett from Help Pay, and that was definitely a highlight, and dare I say a career highlight as well, meeting one of my heroes in John Bertrand. But yeah, amazing what you've achieved with the podcast this year. Thanks for everything.
Stop it. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you're the one who's achieved a significant amount. Obviously, Birchal's come a long way since its inception back in 2018. What made you start the business originally? I know that this wasn't what you did from the get-go. You are a trained lawyer.
Yep. Yeah, I've done lots of things. I imported sugarcane juice machines after a stint living in Vietnam my first year out of high school. I ran promotions at nightclubs for a while.
Oh, gosh.
My dad is a chef involved in the hospitality industry, so I've kind of worked in cafes and ran cafes, and I worked in consulting. But then I realized as people, my friends were becoming adults and starting to kind of get their lives together, and I was looking around and still having a good time.
I think you forgot one as well. The meat smoking.
That came later.
That was later.
Yeah, that came later.
That was post the realization that you wanted to be a grown-up.
Yes, exactly. Because that was a very grown-up thing. But I became a lawyer. I became a lawyer because I felt I needed a professional backing. And I felt that also I was probably, I was very entrepreneurial, but I was missing the training and I suppose the professional framework to kind of understand things and really contribute, meaningfully in business. So I became a lawyer, or I studied law, and in law, to get a good job, you need good marks. I don't think I was ever a good student really until I started studying law, and then because I was hyper focused on an outcome. I really wanted it. I wanted to have a great career as a lawyer. So I became a really good student, and I got a good job. But I am fundamentally an entrepreneur, and there was always this itch that needed to be scratched. So yeah, you talk about meat smoking. My wife and I, Margaret, we entered a cooking contest as part of the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival back in 2013. And it was the first time that there was an American barbecue cook-off competition. And we won and got an invitation to compete at the World Championships of Barbecue in Lynchburg, Tennessee, the Jack Daniel's Distillery, where I represented Australia as the Australian barbecue champion in the States. And then that kind of, and it's a story for another podcast for sure, but like that just set off a chain of events where, we're organising food festivals around the country, competitive, but flying in, personalities from overseas and all sorts of things. And it was not what I'd expected from just entering a barbecue cook-off. I made some amazing friends, had some amazing experiences, but it really did kind of get out of hand after a while. So we needed to I suppose, just kind of refocus on, what I wanted out of life. We weren't really kind of set up to run this big events business. I was always interested in equity crowdfunding, and I saw what was happening in the UK and was following with keen interest as a lawyer. I was doing postgraduate study in crowdfunding. And when it became apparent that the government was thinking about whether Australia should have something similar to the UK, I got involved in the consultation process. And Alan and I got chatting, and we're among the first 7 licensees to be authorised. I think my varied experience, my diverse skill set and range of experiences have put me in an incredible position to build this business, because I can relate to so many of these different founders, the problems that they face, whether it's in kind of food and beverage or entertainment, or so many of the founders I empathise with and identify with. I think my varied experiences prepared me really well for this role. I couldn't think of doing anything else at the moment.
Well, I mean, I hope not, considering the huge impact that Birchal's had. What is it, 300 funded deals now, $218 million worth of funding come through. We've got over 70% of the market share in the equity crowdfunding landscape in Australia. Like, those are pretty huge achievements.
Yes.
And I know the first few equity crowdfunding deals that came through Birchal were close to being successful, but not quite. And then eventually the first one actually funded. Which one was that?
Park Social. Yeah, Sam Thavy's business. And he was our third offer, our first successful offer. So yes, a pretty inauspicious start. Our first 2 campaigns didn't get past their minimum targets, which was good preparation because there've been a bunch of hits after then. Hits, I suppose, in a bad way, also in a good way. But, there are lots of setbacks in business, and you have to keep going. That resilience is something that marks a successful founder and successful businesses, is the ability to persevere. And yeah, it was good preparation because we learnt a lot those first 2 campaigns, and we had an absolute determination to make that third offer successful. Was it not, probably wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah, third time's a charm at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So when you look back at all of the offers that have come through the Birchal platform, what sticks out to you in terms of story and what it means for equity crowdfunding?
For me, it's the power of being able to make an offer of securities to a national audience that has always been the thing that has captivated me. We've been very successful raising or helping companies raise funds that are interesting, that have broad appeal, but lots of craft breweries and consumer packaged goods businesses. But there is so much more that we can do, and this will define the next phase of equity crowdfunding. I ask people to consider what we do as a vehicle to aggregate multiple types of investors rather than a discrete source of funding. And one of the challenges that we've had is people look at the success of these really, amazing, strong brands, and they'll say that's not for me. That's not for my kind of business. But that's not true. Like as you know, there are so many businesses that don't have a product or service to an end consumer, but they're interesting, and they can appeal to a specific audience or a natural audience, and we achieve incredible results for them. And in Australia, where we don't have the investor culture, this entrepreneurial mindset or muscles as strong as other economies, if you think about the United States and Israel and even the UK, this is something that we're going to have to learn and develop and actually do differently as we progress. We don't have the same pool of venture capital that other economies do. So we have to do things differently, and the ability to unlock a national audience of over 10 million investors is incredibly powerful and a unique feature of the equity crowdfunding regime. And I think that for me, that is the most significant feature of what we do. That by making a regulated offer of securities, you get access to arguably the largest pool of capital in the country, over 10 million Australian investors.
So if we're to look at the trends that the US and UK have set for equity crowdfunding, what can we expect to see in Australia?
Yeah, so this is part of the benefit of not being first. Having others that have trodden the path before you or blazed the trail, if you like. And if you look to the UK, there's several years, probably 7 years ahead of us, and they have achieved incredible success. I think 2021 was high watermark for equity crowdfunding in the UK. Over £1 billion raised among the two major platforms there, Crowdcube and Seedrs. Businesses, particularly fintech businesses that were raising their earliest rounds of capital, 2015, 2016, are now some of the biggest companies in Europe. Revolut, it's a prime example. They raised, I think, close to £1 million on Crowdcube in 2016 at approximately 40 million valuation. Their most recent raisings, they just did a secondary share sale, which inferred a $45 billion valuation for the company.
That's crazy.
It's incredible. And early investors through Crowdcube are looking at a 40,000% return. It's unbelievable.
It's nuts.
And there is more. They're looking at IPOing next year, and some expect that the IPO will be approximately 100 billion. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Do you think that we've already uncovered, a unicorn at Birchal and we just don't know it yet?
I'm not going to name. I'm not going to name any, but I think for sure we have funded some incredible businesses so far, and I think it is reasonable to expect that some of them will go on to become unicorns and return significant amounts of capital to investors. We've had two companies. 2 of our first 20 offers are listed now. The first, Biome Australia, we helped them raise on Birchal in 2019 at approximately $6 million pre-money valuation. They listed on ASX in November 21 at a $40 million IPO price. Their market cap at the moment is approximately 140 million. I invested in that business, and significant returns, amazing returns, very early in our journey. And then more recently, went to Warrior, which is now Alta, listed on the New York Stock Exchange earlier this year. And many other successes. Thriday, part of LaunchVic's 30 by 30 program, took $6 million in follow-on investment from NAB Ventures. Many businesses that could all be candidates for our first crowdfunded unicorn.
Yeah, right. So obviously you've taken a lot of inspiration from the equity crowdfunding platforms in the UK. I know there's a few new appointments at Birchal from Rod Bristow and also Darren Westlake. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I am so excited about these appointments. But first, I mean, dealing with Darren Westlake, a real fanboy moment, I've got to say, because being inspired by the UK industry, it was the first time it was done anywhere, and quite surreal to think back to when I was working in private practice and observing the innovation in the UK, to kind of cast my mind forward, probably 10 years more now, and the prospect of working with Darren to scale Australia's equity crowdfunding industry is thrilling. I met Darren towards the end of 22 in London. We had a great lunch together, and it was special. And it was special because there's only a handful of people on the planet, really, that run these types of businesses. And we weren't competitors, we were peers, and had, I suppose, a deep understanding of the challenges and opportunities that someone that runs an equity crowdfunding platform is faced with. So it was a really special lunch, and we've continued that relationship and that conversation since then, and an opportunity for Darren to join Birchal and help us achieve some of the success that the UK regime has, and really scaling Australian equity crowdfunding to the full extent of its potential. I'm absolutely thrilled at the prospect.
And what does Rod Bristow bring to the table, as well as now he's part of the board of directors? Yes.
So Rod has a vast and extensive career in financial services over decades. He was Chief Operating Officer at CommSec during a period of immense growth. CommSec's Australia's largest online broker. And more recently at Investable, where Rod scaled the investor ecosystem, their funds and investor network at Investable, to become one of the most active VC investors in Southeast Asia and Asia Pac. Rod is going to help us scale and become, I suppose, the big and significant part of the financial system that we are destined to be. There is a $38 billion funding gap, equity funding gap, that is not being met, that is holding us back as a nation. The Australian Business Growth Fund commissioned a report recently and looked at all of the capital that was being sought by Australian growth businesses and the unmet demand. Now, if we're going to get where we need to go, that capital has to come from somewhere. Now, trillions of dollars is parked in Australian superannuation, and much of it is invested in overseas startups and overseas funds, an increasing amount in Australian VC funds, but they invest in overseas businesses too. An increasing number of Australians are taking more of an active involvement in investments, whether it's their retirement savings through super or otherwise, and particularly young people that are perhaps locked out of the real estate market. It's getting harder and harder to own a home.
Count me in that.
And looking at more risky asset classes like cryptocurrency, like startups and other things, to build wealth in a way that is different to our parents' generation. Equity crowdfunding is an incredible way for people to get exposure to high risk but also high return assets, It shouldn't be all of your portfolio, but it is an important part of your portfolio allocation as people build wealth. But also it has this added benefit of powering our growth economy. So, investing in businesses that are at the cutting edge, doing new things, employing people, and transforming our economy away from digging things out of the ground and the traditional ways that we've made money and built things in Australia. That's why it's incredibly exciting to be in this part of the financial system. But we need to expand the footprint of crowdsourced funding and get people to realise how powerful it is to make a regulated offer of securities to the public in the same way that only big companies used to be able to do. And Rod is going to be instrumental in helping us to become more integrated with other parts of the Australian financial system, and also underscores the importance of us shifting our focus more to the investor side of our audience. So we've spent, probably the last 6 years focusing and perhaps having a more predominant focus on the founders and making this process as simple and easy as possible. And I think that has certainly been the right strategy, because it is, having great inventory, great founders, great stories to tell has been able to attract investors to our platform. But what will get us to the next phase and scale this industry is this deep insight and understanding and tailoring products and services to our investors. And Rod does bring amazing insight and experience from having done that throughout his career.
So this year has seen a few milestones hit for Birchal, including the launch of the Birchal First Syndicate. Can you explain what that means, not only for investors, but also for companies who are raising through equity crowdfunding?
Yeah. The first part of this year, I spent a lot of time speaking with Birchal's power users and high net worth investors, people that have been active on the platform. Again, Birchal's board kind of encouraging or urging me to do these things. Kate O'Keefe and her influence, this obsession with the customer. So that's what I did. I spent time with Birchal users, and it became apparent that many of them are active angel investors, but they would, I suppose, see their experience in or participation in other angel networks as different to how they experience the Birchal platform. And some of them would lament the fact that it at times could be a bit impersonal, or that they would like to spend more time with founders without the added pressure of them being marketing their opportunities publicly. It
Right.
just, when you're out of the trenches and you're raising capital, it can be a high pressure environment. You've got media you've got to deal with, and there's only so many hours in the day. And I think investors kind of understand that tension as well, and they don't want to impose too much on founders' time. That can also make it really hard to have meaningful conversations about share price, about cornerstone investments, and so on. So many of our larger investors were saying they wanted to engage with opportunities that interested them before they were available on the Birchal platform.
Right.
And this got us thinking that there was probably another process, another mechanism that we could introduce to help founders have these meaningful conversations with high net worth investors. So we have approximately 15,000 wholesale investors in our audience. We were successful in a grant from LaunchVic to stand up a specialized angel network. And we've decided to focus on hardware technology businesses. And that is the Birchal First Syndicate. And what this does basically is allows businesses to spend time with Birchal's wholesale investors before their marketing and expression of interest campaign. So they can price their round and find lead investment. The added advantage is then having that lead investment, these opportunities, which previously would not be available to retail investors, can be topped up by the crowd. So we're getting the best of a specialized angel network, an angel syndicate, spending time with companies, giving them guidance and helping them with price discovery, but then the ability to amplify this by marketing this opportunity to a national audience of investors and topping up from the crowd, which only the crowdsourced funding regime can do, access to 10 million Australian investors. So it's pretty exciting. And we've completed our first successful offer recently and 2 more underway. And really kind of the traction has been incredible. And it's exciting because it will serve as a blueprint for others to create specialized angel networks within the equity crowdfunding ecosystem. And this unlocks opportunities for lots of other communities that may not otherwise have a way to access retail investors. It's getting harder and harder to bring securities offers to market. The regulatory environment, is certainly tending towards, more friction. And the equity crowdfunding regime is an efficient way of bringing these opportunities to market. So, when we think about expanding to other networks, you start to think about universities, alumni communities, backing spin-outs from universities, other groups, anyone with a large audience and opportunities that can be supported by their communities. All of it is potentially up for grabs with the syndicate initiative. So it's incredibly exciting, and I think it'll come to define the next phase of our growth.
So obviously Birchal's constantly growing and actually doing an offer on the Birchal platform. This isn't the first time. This is the 3rd time Birchal's done that. Why is now the perfect time for Birchal to be raising funds, and what does this mean for 2025?
Yeah, we are positioning ourselves for this next phase of growth. It's been a challenging few years, the end of zero interest rates or near zero interest rates, and I suppose the market getting their heads around what a higher interest rate environment looks like, getting inflation under control. There've been lots of headwinds that not only equity crowdfunding but all parts of the financial system have been facing. We've done really well. We've done incredibly well, having achieved fairly stable funding volumes through this period when other parts of the financial system have sustained declines. Has been an incredible achievement. The ability to continue to provide capital to businesses through this period has been amazing as well. And although small, it is a mighty industry. The amounts that we deal with are certainly lower than the listed markets, but when you consider the stage of growth of the businesses that we work with, the impact of that capital is tremendous. And as we've seen, some of them go on to become very significant companies, list and do other things. So, helping by providing capital or facilitating capital at this early stage is pivotal. But we are moving to the next phase of the economic cycle. Most people expect that the next interest rate movements will be down whenever they come, hopefully in the first half of next year. But we are seeing warmth in the IPO markets now. Guzman y Gomez, amazing performance this year. The ASX IPO. I wonder, had Birchal and equity crowdfunding been around in 2012, 2013 when they were launching, maybe their earliest rounds of capital would have been on Birchal. Who knows? But an increasing number of IPOs being brought to market in the last few weeks of 2024. Even if we look overseas, Klarna announcing their plans, buy now, pay later, announcing their plans to list. People are getting ready for the next part of the economic cycle. So us getting into a position where we are ready to pursue the opportunities that are ahead of us is critical. Now, we had to take some actions this year to become financially sustainable. And that involved a cost reduction program, which I am pleased to say has been extremely effective. We reduced approximately 30% cost from our business, which we were able to do because of a range of investments that we'd made into the platform and streamlining our engineering and refocusing our efforts on growth initiatives that will return revenue in a nearer term. So we introduced a range of marketing services. We increased our success fee to 7.5%. We really became hyper-focused on revenue and profitability. And I'm pleased to say that that work has been productive. So our first quarter of FY25 saw a 16% increase in revenue, increase in gross profit, and a decrease in expenses. And we are back on track to break even or profitability, which is awesome. This puts us in an incredible position to continue into next year, but as the market starts to turn and accelerate, really makes us an incredibly profitable business as well. So now is an incredible opportunity for us to shore up our balance sheet and make sure we have enough fuel in the tank to go after these opportunities. And another exciting opportunity for investors to join Birchal as we power through the next phase of growth. And with Darren and Rod behind us and kind of guiding us through on certainly some of the strategies that worked in the UK, it's a really exciting time to join the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look back at Birchal's history and the various businesses that have come through the Birchal platform, you saw key trends of the breweries that you mentioned earlier. Medicinal cannabis has been really popular. What industry do you think will really thrive through equity crowdfunding in 2025?
Crystal ball gazing is always a challenge. I think certainly medicinal cannabis, it is a thriving industry. It's been really interesting to observe and be a part of the growth of that industry as well. It's clear that it is meeting a need for many people in society. So I think that industry still has a way to go, and many investors are really enthusiastically taking up the opportunity to invest. Hardware businesses as well, I think, as we're seeing with the Birchal First syndicate, there are lots of investors that want to back hardware technology businesses, and lots of companies that have a capital need. So really exciting to see how this evolves, and then just businesses that are on mission, that are purposeful. I think this form of fundraising is always an interesting way for those types of businesses to raise capital. And then finally, and I know I'm kind of hedging my bets by naming a bunch here, but boring but good businesses, and expect to hear more about this as next year unfolds. But I think in terms of expanding our regulatory footprint, looking at businesses that are incredible businesses but might not have otherwise thought of equity crowdfunding, but I think an increasing number of them will be, looking at us for the efficiency and the power of being able to make a public offer of securities in an efficient and cost-effective way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of people, and when I say a lot of people, I think founders, I think investors have a lot to thank you for specifically. I thank you for employing me, obviously. That's always been a treat. But how many people do you think in Australia are affected by equity crowdfunding? And going forward, obviously you've said it's this market of 10 million people who have the ability to come on board. How many people have invested through the Birchal platform so far?
There's been 130,000 investments made through the Birchal platform.
Huge. That's crazy.
But it's less than 1% of the investor audience. There's over 20 million Australians over the age of 18. But ASX data indicates that there's over 10 million investors in Australia. There's people that have investments outside the family home or superannuation. So 130,000 investments is less than 1% of that.
Right.
And it all triangulates well. If you look at the UK experience and even the States, that market sizing, if what we do is adopted as widely as it's been adopted in the UK, it suggests that our market is 10 times the size that it is right now. So even that is an incredible opportunity for us to grow. But there is still growth in the UK, and chatting with Darren, he's still blown away by the lack of awareness from some parts of the financial system of equity crowdfunding. He's been at it, 13, 14 years. He's still having conversations with people. And people say, oh my God, small companies can raise capital online from the public now. I'm frustrated by these conversations that I'm having 6 years in. Darren's still having them 13 years in. Frustrating, but incredibly exciting at the same time, because it highlights that we're only scratching the surface of the opportunity. And I think over time, as people start to generate returns and companies go on to achieve success, people will see that this is an incredible way to build wealth, but also back businesses that are shaping a future that we all want to see.
Absolutely. I think it's a really exciting time for Birchal and for all of the companies that are coming through the Birchal platform. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for giving me the platform to share these stories of founders, investors, and people who are contributing to the rich ecosystem that we're really providing in Australia. So thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure. We tell stories, build communities, raise capital online. Awesome.